Remember last year's amazing trip? That cute first birthday party? All those photos, all those memories can be freed from your phone with a Shutterfly photo book. Rediscover and share your favorite moments with those you love. You'll be amazed how easy it is to make a photo book with Shutterfly and enjoy it for years to come. Get 40% off orders over $29 with code POD40 at Shutterfly.com and make something that means something.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
In this film every time when she's devastated, but also at the end with that proposal scene when she just can't keep in the sobs and the elation. Every time I'm sobbing at that scene myself at home, and there are so few times where I cry because someone else is crying through happiness and joy. That doesn't happen very often, but it happens every single time.
I don't like it when Emma Thompson cries.
But she's been doing it, like for years. In Love Actually, that's the scene, isn't it?
That's the scene. That redeems Love Actually for me.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that redeems Love Actually for me is that scene of her crying. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. I'm joined by Helen.
Hello.
Rhianna.
Hi.
And James.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about Sense and Sensibility.
Thank you, as always, to the mighty people for the mighty, mighty tunes. And thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills.
Please do remember to write a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you can do where you listen to the podcast, because it really does help us.
And you can join in the conversation with us on Twitter
at FlixWatcherPod and on Instagram
at Flixwatcher. Hello film fans. Joining Flixwatcher today we have Rhianna and James. If you would like to say hello to our listeners and tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do, please.
My name is Rhianna Dhillon and I'm a film critic. I work at the moment for BBC 6music, but I used to work at Radio 1. James.
I discovered her. I do like to say this. I mean, it's not strictly true, but it's not that far from a lie.
I don't think it is that far from a lie, although I feel like if it had just been down to you, I definitely wouldn't have got the job, because I was the most nervous when I was with you in my little interview process, and I messed it up so badly.
Maybe that's what I was looking for.
If we just gone on the basis of that, then we definitely wouldn't have gone through. So I'm always quite grateful that you
could see beyond.
Didn't completely rule me out. Yeah.
Was he like a Simon Cowell-esque figure, or? But he saw the diamond. Yeah, the Louis Walsh. Okay, the more benevolent.
Yeah, maybe Sharon Osbourne. I don't know. Because I was a film critic at Radio 1 before Rhianna, and then I got too old. And we needed a replacement, and so we sort of began a nationwide search.
So, how does that actually work then? Because, James, I think you were my main BBC One film critic along. You used to go on with Joe Wiley.
Yeah, you were mine as well.
Yeah. So you were my, and then does it just kind of the conveyor belt?
Yes, that's pretty much what it happens. It's like the Doctor Who regeneration. Sure. So you were the Jodie Whittaker, and I was the Peter Capaldi.
And now we've gone back to.
Yeah, I don't know where we are now.
Another white man who's older than me.
Ali's been on us recently, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, so we've had a few BBC.
Yes, you won't get Kermode though.
No.
Was he Radio? He was Radio 1.
Yes, I took over from Mark Kermode. Yeah.
And that's why you're James the Boy King.
To this day.
The upstart.
Which, I'm fine with that. If they want to still think of me as young, then I'm happy.
You are still. You have such a boyish face.
Compared to Simon Mayo and Mark Kermode, who are the two that call me that, then admittedly I will always be younger than them. So to them, I'm a boy.
Just physics.
Exactly.
So we're talking today about Sense and Sensibility, which is your choice, Rhianna.
Yes, I am so thrilled about this. I don't really often get to talk about old movies.
Right.
And the fact that I get to talk about an old film and also a Jane Austen adaptation is really exciting for me.
So, well, tell us why you chose it and give us a synopsis in a minute or less.
I chose this. Well, I mean, I love pretty much all Jane Austen adaptations. I'm a huge fan. We were just talking, James and I, about how the fact that I did Jane Austen for my dissertation at uni.
Wow.
While I think I just got the job at Radio 1 and then wrote my dissertation, which is why my dissertation was terrible. I'd pretty much given up with uni at that point.
Don't need it anymore.
Yeah. But my love for Jane Austen still shines through. And I saw this film, I mean, it came out in 95, so I was only 6. And
Did you see it at 6 years old?
I didn't see it at 6, but I had the VHS, and it was like the back-to-back with Remains of the Day,
right.
Another Emma Thompson and Anthony Hopkins film, and it was beautiful. I just fell in love with both of them from a really young age, and I didn't understand a lot of it, so it was really nice watching it again and again and sort of remembering how I felt when I was little, which bits I understood and loved and which bits I now appreciate a lot more. So Sense and Sensibility is about the Dashwood family, and they are reduced to poverty. I mean, that's still, in that sort of inverted commas, they still retain like 2 servants after their father dies, and their half-brother reneges on his promise to provide for them with what he's inherited from their father. So it falls to the eldest, Elinor, who is played by Emma Thompson, to take responsibility as the one with the most sense. But though, you know, their new circumstances are pretty difficult, the family find a lot of kindness and love. So there are a lot of ups and downs and broken hearts and a solidifying of their sisterly bond. There are 3 sisters, Elinor, Marianne and Margaret. And through the film, you fall in love with all of them.
Nice. Helen, what were your thoughts?
So I think this is probably quite a shared thing, but anyone who has had to do Jane Austen for any kind of GCSE or A-level, you kind of get a bit of an allergic reaction.
Allergic?
Yeah, to the point where you're like, going back to that sort of era. So I'd never seen this before, even though I'm pretty sure I did study the book, but I seem to have blocked most of it out of my mind. So, I mean, the thing that I remembered when this came out is obviously Ang Lee directed it. Yeah. One of his sort of earlier films, and obviously Emma Thompson wrote the screenplay, which she won an Oscar for as well. And it's also one of the earlier Kate Winslet appearances. But I had no idea that Hugh Grant was in this one.
Right.
Hugh Grant's brilliant in it, isn't he? Hugh Grant is so good in it. I think now we take a bit for granted that Hugh Grant is just great, because he's had this real renaissance over the last 4 or 5 years, and now it's like, yeah, of course Hugh Grant is great. He's always been great, which he has, but I don't think we realised it at the time, because this was For Weddings and Your Funeral, Hugh Grant. I mean, it's a couple of years afterwards.
Mickey Blue Eyes.
Yeah, it was that era where he was a pin-up, where he was hot property in Hollywood, where he was on the way up. And I think at that point we thought, well, we like him, but we don't really think he's a great actor. He's just pretty Hugh Grant. Now, looking back on it, first time I'd seen it since the mid-90s, I was just surprised by how good he is. He's really good at it.
He's really funny. What I love about this is his and Emma Thompson's comic timing together. And weirdly, he's not in the film nearly as much as you think, that the leading man, Edward Ferrars, should be, which surprised me watching it back again and really kind of focusing on him. But when he is, he lights up the room a little bit. He just has that sort of frisson with Emma Thompson, whether they're playing brother and sister in Love Actually or lovers in this. There's always this fantastic chemistry.
Oh, there was another Love Actually connection there, because I was thinking Alan Rickman and Emma Thompson. This is the first time I've seen this, and I had always kind of had a prejudice against period drama. I never read. I was more had to read more like Merchant of Venice at school than Jane Austen. So I don't know whether I won or lost on that.
I did both. I mean, I did like Shakespeare and Austen.
It is possible to do both.
It is, yeah. My school just gave me one, I think. You got this, and then Hamlet, and then. But yeah, I when you picked it, because we kind of just say pick anything you want, because it's kind of a selfish podcast in a way, because I want to watch more films that are outside of the kind of general wheelhouse. Yeah. And I thought, well, let's do it. Let's have a go. And I genuinely really enjoyed it.
Good.
And I think one thing I was really surprised about was that it's Ang Lee directing it at a time when I'm sure his English wasn't that great. No. For a classic English literature adaptation. It just kind of didn't make any sense. And this is a guy who does your kung fu films, and he does Incredible Hulk, but he also does Brokeback Mountain. So this is a guy who someone recognised that he's got this ability, this potential to do a wide range of films in a wide range of languages, which a lot of and you've got the guys in Mexico, you've got Guillermo del Toro and stuff, but people, a lot of times you don't cross over the languages that well.
And especially for such an English film. It is a very English film, and I think that's where Emma Thompson comes into her own.
Yeah.
She really updates the novel, I think.
So how does it kind of vary? Because that's one thing I was kind of thinking. I think one of the things that always puts me off with period adaptations, even like I didn't watch Romeo and Juliet. I didn't watch Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet because I knew it was in the Shakespeare text. Is the way people speak is kind of jarring to me, but it didn't seem to be that much of a jarring experience in this case.
No, I think she's very clever. I think she modernizes it in a way that it's not so much about the language, but more about the plot. So, for example, Edward Ferrars, I don't think is nearly so much as a sympathetic character in the novel as he is in the film. We fall in love with him in the film.
I don't think he's meant to be particularly good looking in the novel, is he?
I don't think Hugh Grant is that good looking. But I think he's better looking now than he was back then. But also Colonel Brandon was supposed to be 35 in the novel-ish, but also Marianne was supposed to be 16.
So who's Marianne? Sorry,
Marianne is Kate Winslet.
Right.
So the fact that she's obviously much older. Elinor is much older. But Colonel Brandon, actually played by Alan Rickman. Alan Rickman was in his mid 40s when he played Colonel Brandon. But yet it doesn't feel so icky as a 16-year-old and a 35-year-old. So there are those little modernizations, I think.
So how old's Marianne in this?
I think what she's supposed to be 20?
Yeah,
19,
I mean, in
20?
real life, I think Kate Winslet was 19 or 20,
Yeah.
so she's probably about that age. Going back to the Ang Lee thing, he'd done a movie called The Wedding Banquet, which I think was the reason why he got this movie, which was...
still in Chinese language, wasn't
it?
it?
Yeah, I mean, it's that was, back home for him where he filmed that, but he came over to the UK to film this. I suppose they do have a similarity in that they're family dramas, comedies of manners, really, I suppose you call them. And I think he does those best. I'm much more impressed by Ang Lee when he does those kind of films than when he tries to be blockbuster Ang Lee. When he does the intimate stuff, I think it's much more interesting. And it probably worked out for the best that he didn't know the book. He wasn't concerned about the sort of national treasure status of Jane Austen. I think there was even problems on set just in terms of communicating with people, and the atmosphere of making films in Taiwan is very different to the atmosphere of making films here. And so there were definitely issues from what I can tell, having read things about the movie, but not to the film's detriment. No. Actually, they helped keep it fresh. They helped keep it sprightly. And it is so sprightly still, isn't it? It's so crisp. Even all these years later, what are we now, 24 years later? It still feels... And actually, that's Jane Austen, really, isn't it? As much as Emma Thompson.
Yeah, it absolutely
There's
is.
a new version of Emma coming out soon.
Yeah.
And, they're perennial. That you can almost make those... adapt those stories at any time, and they will always feel fresh and current.
I absolutely agree. And I just want to ask you guys, were you surprised at how funny it was? Did you find it funny?
That's a no.
Yeah, there were some funny moments in there. The bit where they there's kind of the multiple displays of flowers, kind of those little moments. I mean, I'm not the biggest period drama fan.
What's the hang up? Because actually, both of you said that, didn't you? What's the hang up with period?
But
dramas?
you're one of the main champions of me going to see Little Women.
Yeah, but I don't really count that as period drama.
Why not?
Though.
It absolutely is, right?
I don't know.
But I think it's good. The comparisons actually to Little Women are key, I think, in this, because it's the same producer, Amy Pascal, who's just been Oscar nominated for producing Little Women, was back in the day in a previous job the big champion of this film and the one who got this the green light. And it got the green light because there had been version of Little Women with Winona Ryder in the mid-90s that had been very successful. So that had been successful. All of a sudden studios go, right, period dramas with women, let's have some more of those. And so Sense and Sensibility got off the ground. So I think there are comparisons to Little Women, and I think Little Women, the current version that we have, the Greta Gerwig version, in 25 years' time, we'll watch that and it will still feel fresh and crisp. There are definite similarities between the two.
I thought it was really funny. I liked. I'm going to. Well, I don't actually know her actor's name because she was the youngest character.
Margaret.
Yeah,
Miriam Francois.
I just looked it up.
She's got an interesting story.
She's got like multiple degrees and PhDs and stuff.
She's now an Islamic academic and broadcaster.
Yeah.
I mean, she was always going to be an academic,
somewhere here in London.
With Margaret, she's a force of nature in the film.
Well, I loved her interactions at the start of the film, where she's in the tree house and she's pulling up the ladder, fighting with her mum, and then under the table, with Atlas. And this is where Hugh Grant comes in and he has his kind of comic like timing beats.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Like when she mules with like frustration, and he goes to sort of cover it, and it's like they're still making those sorts of jokes even now in films, but he's just very good at those beats. You're right.
Yeah,
it's the original romantic comedy, isn't it? Yeah. Really, Jane Austen, her stories, and I think those comparisons, you briefly mentioned it, didn't you? That Hugh Grant and Alan Rickman and James Fleet as well. He was in Four Weddings, wasn't he? He's in this.
Oh, hold on. The main man who I thought was hilarious every time he was on screen was Hugh Grant. Every time.
Say that again?
When Hugh Grant was on screen, I was...
Are you talking about laughs?
Yeah.
When you laugh?
When I laughed.
Yeah.
Hugh Grant's just dry delivery of everything. Looking at a newspaper. No, it wasn't.
No, you mean Hugh Laurie?
Hugh Laurie, that's
yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting the Hughes mixed up. Yeah.
Wasn't Hugh Jackman? No.
Literally, look at my notes. I've just written Hugh Laurie. So funny.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
Another one who's linked to Richard Curtis, to alternative comedy, to... and I think those links are definitely there, that there is a romantic comedy blueprint in Jane Austen that Richard Curtis has certainly drawn from. And it was also, I remember watching it and seeing Emma Thompson, who herself had been sort of part of the alternative comedy boom.
Well, she was there with Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry.
Yeah, and watching it thinking, wow, this is Emma Thompson really grown up. It felt like a real, I know she just won the Oscar for Remains of the Day, but I think around that time, which was that on the same VHS?
Yeah, so
I think that's a good double bill, isn't
it? Great, and it's also for a little girl discovering Remains of the Day.
Classy.
Was a weird one.
Did you record that yourself? Was that
no? That was bought for me.
Hold on.
There was an era where you used to buy a video and you used to get two films on one, and that I remember seeing this particular one quite a lot of times.
But I used to have that because I used to obviously Christmas is as we record this has just happened, and it was my favourite thing to get like the longest version of a VHS and record like at least two films and cram them.
If you could cram them,
exactly.
So
that's when you said I had two in one. I was like, oh, you've recorded them both.
No, I didn't have that good.
You had a Thompson double bill.
I did,
and it was her. It was her maturing, wasn't it? Both of those films. It really was.
You see her strength, her sort of quiet strength in both of the films, but especially in this one, she is obviously the one that the sense applies to. She is the more reserved. She keeps all of her emotions so tightly locked in. She is like the epitome of a repressed Brit in some cases, and when she lets it out, it is so heartbreaking. And just I cry so much in this film every time when she's devastated, but also at the end with that proposal scene when she just can't keep in the sobs and the elation. Every time I'm sobbing at that scene myself at home, and there are so few times where I cry because someone else is crying through happiness and joy. That doesn't happen very often, but it happens every single time.
I don't like it when Emma Thompson cries. It makes me sad.
But she's been doing it, like for years. In Love Actually, that's the scene, isn't it?
That's the scene. That redeems Love Actually for me.
Yeah,
that's the only thing that redeems Love Actually for me is that scene of her crying,
because she knows when to do it. She doesn't, like Marianne is so emotional. Everything is close to the surface. She's always in tears. She's always on one extreme or the other. And so when Elinor shows her emotion, it just means so much more. It resonates.
I really appreciated Emma Thompson's performance in this much more than I did when I first watched it. I've only watched it twice. I watched it when it came out and I watched it a few days ago. And I think the first time I watched it, because I'm the same age as Kate Winslet, and she was sort of the hot thing of the
Yeah.
moment. I was totally focused on Kate Winslet. I thought this is a Kate Winslet movie.
Right.
This time watching it, I thought this is an Emma Thompson movie.
Yeah, it is.
And because I'm older now, older than Emma Thompson is in the film. But she's the one that I kind of was drawn to. Although speaking of age, Tom Wilkinson, he's always been old.
I know, honestly, he's a
Mr.
dying
Dashwood.
old man
And I
in
thought
this.
I looked it up. I thought, is that Tom Wilkinson? Because this was made a long time ago, and he can't have been old back then, pre-Full Monty.
that-
He's always been old.
There are certain people who just like, oh, they are the same. Like in Midnight Run, we had Joey Pants. I can't remember his.
Joe Pantoliano.
Yeah, Joe Pantoliano, and he was already bald at like 18 in that film. I was just like, did he ever get a break?
Yeah. Tom Wilkinson, always old.
Always old. Maggie Smith, always old as far.
Always
Yeah,
old.
yeah.
So Helen, you weren't so why were you so?
I'm sensing some reservations from Helen, aren't you, Rihanna?
Yeah,
there's
I
not
wanna
a
hear
lot
more.
of
I
joy
do
and
want to hear
excitement coming
more
out.
about
of
Why were you so keen to see Little Women versus not? Because to me, this is like period drama. Oh, this is actually period drama can be good, kind of wheelhouse. So what was?
Period drama is always good.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, like I say, I think I genuinely have been prejudiced against period dramas.
I think there's certainly an image of period drama as quite dry. And this is, I'm not saying this is true, but there's a prejudice against it as being a bit dry, a bit kind of crusty. It's for your parents or your grandparents. And often this time of year, we're in January now, it's the kind of film that comes out for award season and blah, blah, blah. But to me, both Little Women in its new version and Sense and Sensibility are exact reasons why that's not true.
Yeah.
Because they tick the boxes in terms of, yes, they've got the costumes and they've got the scenery and all those things, but they have a sort of an energy to them that's really youthful and really modern.
Yeah.
So go on, I'm intrigued.
I guess maybe it's the Jane Austen school thing of
Sure.
having it rammed down your throat, and
So maybe
Like
the fact I didn't have Jane Austen.
maybe.
What about the
but-
other adaptations of Jane Austen films and TV series?
So I don't think I've never seen the famous Pride and Prejudice one,
Right,
and
Colin
I've
Firth, yeah.
not seen the Keira Knightley one either.
Right.
So we've
don't
had
bother with that one.
we've had in this year pod we've had Love and Friendship.
Which I wasn't
You're not keen
that
on.
into,
Yeah.
And we've had Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
but that's terrible.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That does not count.
Yeah.
And then I guess preference as well, isn't it? I'm much more at home watching a horror film than
Yeah.
I would be watching
So
a period.
the zombies added because you actually read Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, didn't you?
Yeah, it's awful.
Okay.
Terrible. Don't ever do that.
Yeah, so Little Women versus Sense and Sensibility. Why were you more up for Little Women?
Greta Gerwig.
Okay.
Right. Okay. I mean, that's a fair enough
Yeah.
And
choice.
the cast
yeah.
as well was, how
And-
can you turn that cast down?
And I think, again, sometimes, this is probably in the mind rather than in reality, but we think, oh, well, it's British, it's a bit sort of stuffy and historical. Whereas American, you might go, well, that's going to have a bit more attitude to it because it's a bit removed from us here in the United Kingdom.
I was really looking forward to watching it though, but then as I was watching it, it just didn't really.
Little Women, we talk about, or
Sense
Sense
and Sensibility.
Right. Okay.
It didn't.
Pop out at you.
No. So I was when you picked it, I was like, I've never seen it, and
Yeah.
obviously Emma Thompson is great, but yeah, it just.
What do you think of the performances in it?
Oh, I think they're all great, but I don't know. I think it's just me and Jane Austen probably have a slightly strange relationship that probably needs some more counselling.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe not.
There's going to be more adaptations. She ain't going anywhere.
That's
well, I mean,
true.
she went away a long time ago. But what about Clueless?
That's what I was going to say. It was based on Emma, isn't it?
Yeah,
So yeah, but that's great. But then
American High School. What's
yeah,
not to love?
And Paul Rudd, and I remember watching that when it was fairly recent as well.
Yeah.
So also I've got that history of watching that fairly when it came out, whereas with this, no sort of history or connection or kind of emotional connection with it.
Was Clueless the same year?
It was
But,
close,
95.
yeah, 95, 96.
Yeah.
It was around the
Yeah.
same time. There was definitely
That's
a
interesting.
renaissance, wasn't there? Because
Yeah.
that was when the TV show, or around that time, the
Yeah.
Colin Firth one.
95, yeah. It was
And then I
Pride and
think
Prejudice.
the Gwyneth Paltrow version of Emma was
96.
was around that time as well. So,
Let's just name Jane Austen adaptations so you can pop
and
it
the
off.
years in which they came out.
I'm a bit Rain Man when it comes to Jane Austen. I think I had I guess the opposite experience of you, where Jane Austen was so prevalent in my childhood through my mum. Persuasion is like her favourite book ever, and she definitely passed that on to me. And so I was always so excited to see the next Jane Austen. I watched the Colin Firth and Jennifer Ely adaptation when I was 6, and again, I don't remember it all, but I did record all of those on VHS and watch them constantly again and again and again. So I have this almost obsessive nature when it comes to Jane Austen, like the exact opposite of you, Ellen. You just can't bear to watch them, which is fair enough. Sometimes if you don't relate to an author, that's it. I have that a bit with Dickens, and the only one that's I've really enjoyed is the new Dev Patel one.
Yeah,
what's that?
Again, feels very modern, doesn't it? It's taking a traditional story.
Again, that's actually really strange because again, that's a period drama. Where I'm like, yes, I want to see that.
See, I want to see that, so it would be interesting for me to see how I get on with that
with Dickens,
because I've never read any Dickens, and that's not really my thing.
So maybe it's period dramas with a kind of romantic angle to it, because I think. The kind of thing for me is like I used to think it's Sunday night, there's some kind of period drama thing on TV, and that's so not what I want to watch before going to school.
It's associated with that Monday morning dread, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, like Bronte, for example, I was thinking watching Marianne, because she is the romantic heroine of this, much more like the sort of typical romantic heroine with all the drama and everything. And if this had been written by one of the Brontes, she would be dead by the end of the novel, 100%. She nearly dies a lot. She's always having to be rescued. And I think that's where Jane Austen's kind of lightness and comedy comes into play a little bit more, that she manages to get her happy ending, whereas perhaps the Brontes were going a bit more for...
They're a bit more dour.
Yeah.
Yeah, up
bleak.
on those moors.
Yeah.
Should we,
more bleak.
Before we go to the scores, do you think... we did talk about the age gap there.
Yeah.
And I always felt... watching this and then thinking about it after watching it over the past few days, I just feel that she's settled. Do you think she's truly happy with old Alan Rickman, or she just feels that she's got a good, trustworthy person who will stand by her side, and that's...
It's a really interesting question, because I think Marianne is always going to have that flightiness within her. I don't think that's just going to go away after one quite horrific experience. But also I think with Willoughby, in the novel, he's actually not as much of a cad as he is in the film. And there is that regret that you see, when he's watching their wedding from afar on horseback. Again, so romantic. But that regret you feel is definitely there for him. And also, he sends back her lock of hair, Marianne's lock of hair, which, there's so much sexual tension when he's cutting that off. It's incredibly loaded, that scene. But then actually you find out in the book that his fiancée sends it back.
Right.
Which changes everything. Willoughby loves her to the end, and yet it all comes down to money and inheritance.
So do you know how much that £50,000 would be worth in today's money?
God, I've got absolutely no idea. Have you looked it up?
I looked it up. It's £4.2 million.
Wow.
So
I'd marry Miss Grey.
You've lost your inheritance, and someone pops up who's not unattractive, and here's a £4.2 million sweetener.
Yeah. It's true. And again, I think it's a modern problem, right? Like, that is something, people will always go after the money.
Not necessarily always, but it's not, you can understand
Edward
the
doesn't,
choice.
And I think that's Edward doesn't, but also he's not seen so much as the grand sweeping romantic hero. Marianne makes that very clear. He is the sort of more staid one, but that's what Elinor is attracted to, because she likes the safety, Marianne likes the danger, and aren't we all split in that way? I think. As you're saying, so modern.
I know your boyfriend. Is he sensible or dangerous?
He's definitely sensible.
Oh, okay.
I think I am more of an Elinor, but with a bit of Marianne in me.
Yeah.
Everyone's a combo of the two. I know your lovely wife.
Yes.
So
she's definitely Marianne.
What are you?
Yeah. Oh, I'm Hugh Grant all the way, surely.
Should we head to the scores, guys?
Yes.
Hello, I'm Sam Pay.
And I'm Martin Zoltz-Orstwick.
And we are the two hosts of a podcast called Song by Song, where we listen every week to a track by the musical artist Tom Waits. You might know him for his gravelly voice, very nice, his appearance in films, but also his multi-decade spanning career involving blues, jazz, and all sorts of other kinds of experimental music.
So we're basically like a book club for Tom Waits, and if that sounds like your cup of tea, you can find us at songbysongpodcast.com or wherever you get podcasts.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Let's head to the scores. Welcome to the spreadsheet of dreams. All of our scores are out of 5. You may have decimal places, and we'll start with you, Rhianna, with the recommendability score, please.
I always find this quite funny because I'm literally recommended, you all to watch this.
Sure.
So 100%. I think everyone should see it. It's a brilliant example of how a period drama can be adapted successfully.
But it's not uncommon for people to obviously bring a film to the table and also
Yeah,
as soon as
terrible.
Yeah,
I'm really sorry.
As soon as we see them, they're like, I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I regret instantly.
Everything. Luckily, I don't have that with this.
But that's it. I mean, one of the first things you said about this is such an old film.
Mm-hmm.
This
It's
is one
not
reason.
that old, though.
Well, 1905.
It's not that old.
95 is 25 years ago. But yeah, it's an old film, and that's one of the good things about Netflix is that it's easier-ish if it's in the catalogue to watch those films where it has passed you by, or my prejudices at the time of being 15 years old, but I'm not going to watch that.
Yeah.
Clothes. No, it's all about clothes and horses. I don't care.
Don't talk about clothes in it.
Well, you just get the perception because it's all about
Yes.
Britches.
100%.
James, recommendability score.
4.
You can go to decimal places, by the way, if you want to.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with 4.
no,
Sure.
sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm very determined and convinced by that 4. Yeah.
Helen.
I'm going to go 3.5. I think if Jane Austen is your bag, then you will love this. But I didn't get what you got from it.
You didn't get the feels, did you?
No, and I really wanted to. I did go into it really open, and having seen the cast and having Ang Lee is someone I admire, it just didn't work for me.
Do you think that cast, if you were to watch this, if this was, how do I phrase this? Back then, how big of a draw was the cast? Because comparable to Little Women, because you T-Charles, Saoirse,
They're still like the hot young things of the time, though, weren't they?
Yeah, that's what. So to me, that seems like almost a comparable kind of level of.
Yeah,
cast,
I was a student, and it was sort of deemed to be a student-worthy movie, which you could argue that a lot of traditional period dramas, the kind you don't like, wouldn't be. They'd be like, oh, that's for your granny.
Yeah.
But we were teenagers and we went to see it.
Did you have like a poster of Kate Winslet in your room or anything?
I didn't. But it was definitely the time of my female friends having posters of Hugh Grant.
Okay.
So it was a film with pin-ups in
yeah.
it.
I mean, in Little Women, I think Florence Pugh is my pin-up.
Yeah.
100%.
Timothy Chalamet's a pin-up.
T-Charles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
T-Charles is going to be play. It's got a place in London soon at the
He has.
new
It's
Vic.
all sold out.
It's
It's
sold
gone.
out. Okay, fine.
Yeah, it's interesting we say about that because I think about this time all I was probably interested in was Keanu Reeves.
Right.
So a different angle on
Yeah.
on what kind of films he was making at that time.
So this was Point Breakish time and Bill and Ted.
Well, later than that. This would have been his
Speed.
bad film Speed,
Speed, okay.
and Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Okay. That's period.
It is.
But it's
also,
Keanu
it's also
Reeves.
got Gary Oldman in it as
Also
well.
shit.
Yeah. We can soon be married, I believe is one of Keanu's catchphrases or sentences in that film, Dracula. Not his finest performance.
Does he have any fine performances?
He does do. Have you seen Parenthood? It's got
He's
a great
great.
monologue.
No.
It's got a great monologue in Parenthood.
Has he?
It's a great film.
Does he get
that.
through it?
So I'm going to go for a 4.5 here.
Excellent.
I'm going to give it a little boost because I kind of try and override my previous prejudices. I can't say that word. My previous misconceptions. There you go. After going to Little Women, I recommended to a WhatsApp group with our film quiz people and said, guys, go and see Little Women. And one of the guys was like, no, it's period drama. I was like, dude, sort your head out. Go and see it.
I mean, that you can't get away with that these days. That's not something you should be saying, is it?
I agree.
So I'm overriding that and using that to say, look, it's a good film. No one will be offended by this, apart from, I do think the age differences are a bit jarring and...
Kind of comes with the era. If you remade it with a modern setting, then you'd probably need to address that slightly. But
when you've got actors this good, they can convince you, can't they?
Do you miss? How much do you miss Alan Rickman?
So much.
Immensely. Today, by the way, is the when we're recording this, Oscar nominations day, and it was on Oscar nominations day, maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah,
the announcement of his death. Because I remember I was about to go on 5 Live to talk about the Oscars, and they go, by the way, before you talk about the Oscars, we've just heard Alan Rickman's died, so can you talk about that as well? Which felt just really peculiar. But every Oscar nominations day, and as I said today in this recording session, it is Oscar nominations day, I think of Alan Rickman.
Yeah.
And then watching this film again, just reminded of it, just so singular, just no one else like him was there. I mean, you can't replace him. There's no one doing anything like what he did.
He has so much gravitas and depth to every scene. And when he's reading to Marianne at the end, and of course she falls in love with him when he's reading to her. We all do. It's got such that voice.
Ridiculous, isn't it? Just amazing.
And I don't know how the book plays out, but his character could have just generally been a whole full-on jealous tirade against Willoughby, but he seemed super reserved. He just knew who he was in his person.
Yeah,
that it didn't seem like an issue. And he, if he was going to lose to Willoughby, then so be it. And he's done it fairly and squarely, but he's not done it with any kind of malice or chopping anyone's head off. And I thought that was a nice way to play the game.
You'd have liked a bit of chopping the head off, wouldn't you? That's more your thing, Helen.
A bit of that, yeah.
Yeah.
That would have livened it up
Sense
a
and
bit.
Sensibility and serial killers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there is one, isn't there? There's Sense and Sensibility, and it's like a sea creature.
Right, okay, yes, there is. I can picture the cover of the book. Yeah.
I can't remember what it is. Not sharks. It's like
Sharkzilla.
Giant squid. We have had shark. No, what was it?
Sharknado.
We've had that
3.
Oh.
Repeat viewing score, Rhianna.
I mean, I've seen this, I can't tell you how many times. Hundreds. So
And you will continue to see it.
I will.
Sure.
Absolutely. 5.
And that's obviously when you say you had that VHS.
Yeah.
And if you had VHSs, you weren't, well, most people weren't rich, or most people didn't. I don't think people collected VHS in the same way they collected DVDs, because
There's not enough room.
no one had the space.
I did.
You collected loads, did you?
Yeah, under the bed was the place to put them when you'd run out of space on your shelf.
Ah.
Well, this one's always stayed by the VHS.
Yeah.
It never went into the cupboard. So it was always there.
Have you still got it?
I think it might be at my parents' still.
I know,
you
but you'd want to, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
It's a nice little memento.
Yeah.
I've still got my Ferris Bueller's Day Off
Have
VHS,
you?
so I'm
Of
not,
course you
I can't
have.
play it, but why would I get rid of it?
You need to put that in like kind of frame, don't you?
It is signed by Matthew Broderick, by the way, about it.
All right.
You haven't got Emma to give a little scribble on your...
No.
You should start carrying it around though, just in
Just in
case.
case. I've seen her a few times just around.
I mean, it's,
New
the thing is,
Broadcasting
it's not
House.
just one Emma film, it's a double bill, so it's perfect, really.
Yeah.
She'd love it.
She would. Good plan, guys.
Then you can get your Last Christmas Blu-ray signed as well.
Last Christmas for another time, I guess.
Oh,
Yes.
God, no.
Just for the record, I quite enjoyed Last Christmas. I knew exactly what it was going to be.
Careful now.
I know I'm not going to spoil it. I knew exactly what it was going to be, and so I was just like,
exactly.
this is
Same writer as Sense and Sensibility.
Yeah.
Can you believe
You
that?
sort of hate watch it, don't you? It's sort of like trash watching a little bit.
so 5. I'm guessing for
Yeah,
repeat viewing score.
yeah.
James, this is your second time.
Yeah, second time. I'm going to go for another 4. I think perhaps there's a slight essence of not the story dating, because I think Jane Austen is timeless, but perhaps just some of the I guess the filmmaking techniques, which after 25 years I don't think is a particular problem. But the reason why I do think people should watch it again is that there are subtleties in it, and it's something that does deserve multiple viewings. You'll be rewarded with multiple viewings, because if you have a performance like that from Alan Rickman, you don't get it all the first time round. You pick up on little things.
Helen.
I almost feel as though James was telling me that I should watch it.
I was trying to look at the ceiling, but really, yes, it was totally aimed at you, Helen. Come on.
Come on, he finishes.
Okay, so on that, I'm going to go for 2.5 down the middle. I will give it another go, not immediately, but
No, you won't. I mean, if you don't like a film, I don't ever see the point in seeing it again, if I'm honest.
There's a bit, obviously, you watched it when you were younger. I think that I did like what you said about you not understanding it the first few times.
There are lots of layers when you're a kid.
Our current highest scoring film is When Harry Met Sally. And I've definitely watched it in the 80s, but I was again like, romance. But then as you're watching more, and as you get older, you get more and more out of it. And the most recent rewatch, I was like, oh, this is a Stone Cold classic. This is absolutely the best thing. The conversations are there. Everything is just like on point. And I think sometimes you should watch it again, a film again, to get those nuances that you were kind of were not susceptible to.
You know, When Harry Met Sally, if you didn't like it the first time round, there's been 30 odd years of critical appraisal with everybody saying it's brilliant. You know, you might say, well, I'm not going to watch Jean-Claude Van Damme in Kickboxer again because it hasn't necessarily had that. I know that there are fans of the movie out there, but it's kind of hasn't really got that to back it up. But there are classic films that we might not have got the first time round that continue to be deemed classics, like When Harry Met Sally, that after a while you might think, well, surely I should give this another go just to see what all the fuss is about. If they're still talking about it all these years later, I should probably give it a go.
Yeah. So 2.5. I'm going 2.5 again. As much as I did like it this time, I don't think it's going to be a frequent rewatch for me.
Yeah. This is the only film version of Sense and Sensibility, isn't it?
Ooh,
I don't think
there has been.
Another one.
There's definitely a TV adaptation that was like a sort of TV film. But and I think it's the only film release that I can think of.
Because there's been 2 films of Emma.
There was one with Dan Stevens, a TV version.
Does it need to be a film?
Right.
I mean, you said the filming techniques, the techniques were not dated, but you can tell.
Yeah, and just it's sometimes just the quality of the visuals.
Yeah.
You know, that just happens with films of a certain age. I mean, does there need to be a new version? Well, I don't think there needs to be a new version because this version is terrible, but I'm always happy to see new versions of great stories just to see what people do with it. Little Women has been done umpteen times, but there's still room for a new version. And it doesn't mean that the Emma Thompson version is going to be defunct. You know, that will still exist if there's a newer version.
Yeah. I mean,
whether a new version is good or bad, there will always be this classic Emma Thompson version.
I think I loved Little Women so much because I wasn't attached to the 94 version with Winona Ryder. Maybe seen it once or twice, but had no interest really in rewatching that. So this feels like my Little Women in the same way that felt like my Sense and Sensibility. So if there's a new one, I think, like with the new Emma, I'm like, well, it's not my Emma.
So Gwyneth is your Emma, is she?
Gwyneth is my Emma,
right, okay.
Not Anya Taylor-Joy. Definitely not the bloke who's playing Mr. Knightley. Johnny, what's his...
I don't... Oh, Johnny Flynn?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Absolutely not.
So you've already made your decision. By the way, Rhianna hasn't seen this film. She's already made up her mind about it.
Yes, but I don't fancy Mr. Knightley, therefore not my Emma. But I think it's one for every generation, right?
Sure. Small screen score.
I think...
Has anyone actually seen? Has anyone seen this on the big screen in this room?
Yeah, I saw it on the big screen. Yeah. But again, it was 25 years ago.
Sure.
I was a teenager. I don't particularly recall. Well, apart from loving it, so I guess that means it had an impact. And I think I probably loved it more on the big screen than I did watching it on the Netflix app the other night.
Sure.
So you're not coming to me yet, but I'll give you the score in a second.
I think there are so many beautiful sort of. The scenery is gorgeous. We haven't really talked about that, but just like the sweeping English countryside will always look much better on a big screen. I think for that, probably a 4.
James.
Yeah, I mean, I think, especially if you're going into it cold, if you haven't seen it before, you might have some issues with it, like I said, just for the age of the film. And I think seeing it on the big screen is going to be more of an immersive experience than seeing it at home on the telly. So I'll go for 3. I would recommend seeing it on as big a screen as possible.
Helen?
I'm going to go different. I'm going to go 5. I think just because...
Helen, you have thrown us now. We don't know where you're going with this.
It doesn't matter if you watch it on a big screen. It's still going to be shit.
No, I think it's just like brain association that these things kind of work on the screen.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's the Sunday night period drama on the TV thing. I think it's fine on a TV screen.
Yeah, I'm going to go for 5 as well. like James said, I don't think it doesn't look like a modern film in any way, shape, or form. But there's some older films that look still astonishing, and I don't think this is it. The English countryside looks great in it, but I don't think it doesn't pop for me.
Yeah.
So I'm super happy just watching it at home with headphones on if possible. Just for Alan Rickman's voice.
Into your soul.
Engagement score.
I mean, I'm always so engaged watching this. I think if I was watching it with my friends now who maybe hadn't seen it, I reckon they'd be on their phones a little bit.
Sure.
And I was trying to get
Would you slap it out of the hands?
Yeah, probably. I'd definitely give them an elbow in the ribs, which was what I was trying to do with my boyfriend. I was like, come and watch this with me. And he was just on his phone the whole way through. So I would say maybe 3.8. Not for me personally, but
for the collective.
If I'm being realistic, yeah.
James?
I was going to say 3.8.
No, you weren't.
I think that 3.5 I'll go. I think there might be issues in today's climate watching it for the first time on, let's say, a laptop.
If you're not mouthing it word for word.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Helen?
I'm going to give it a 3.
That's it.
I mean, it is 2 hours, 16 minutes. It's quite long.
Yeah, I didn't realise how long it was, actually. Even after I'd seen it, didn't realise how long it was until I looked it up today. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, it's 136 minutes. That's insane.
But I think that's part of the course for a period drama. And I think that's one of the reasons I was actually looking forward to seeing Love and Friendship, because that's like a 90-minute mark type film.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay.
But also feels quite shallow as well, I think.
Love and Friendship.
Compared to some of the others. I think you can tell the difference.
I'm going to go for 4 here. I watched this on my iPad. I was on a train going home, going back to visit parents and friends in Manchester, and it stopped with 30 minutes to go, and I was like, I need to get back and need to watch
really
the end
nice.
of it. So that said to me I needed to.
Where was that? Was that just before Marianne gets?
This was at the point where Emma Thompson's character, Elinor, is telling Hugh Grant's character,
Edward,
that Colonel
Brandon
has set aside a farm for him if he wants to get married.
Parish.
A parish for him. Mm-hmm. So it's just when Elinor was there, Hugh Grant's about to walk in, and I just thought, let's stop here.
Okay.
And I knew there's going to be something going on at that point. That was like, I was really kind of excited. Right. But I also kind of knew what was going to happen, that it wasn't going to be it was going to be his brother that got married to.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
you guessed?
I kind of guessed. And when the servant that they like you said, they have retained the services of 2 servants still.
Yeah.
When he said, he's got married to a parish. I can't remember parish. Lucy Steele. Yeah. And I thought, well, it's the other one that we met in the party.
Robert Ferrers, who is, I feel so sorry for that actor, because he's sort of revealed as being one of the ugliest men of the time, isn't he? Like, everybody's faces fall, everyone looks so devastated.
Dark,
and it was just like, this poor guy he is supposed to be, literally repulses everyone around him, and yet they're still drawn to him because of the money.
Yeah. Was he the guy that played, was he in Maid Marian and His Merry Men, the TV show?
Was he Maid Marian?
No, was he in the TV show Maid Marian and His Merry and Her Merry Men?
I've never seen it. Sorry.
I'll come back to you on that. IMDb it. Yeah, so I'm going to go for 4. And that gives us an overall score of 3.89, just not quite reaching the 4 there.
Yeah. It was Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters.
And Sea Monsters. Did I say Sea Monsters?
Well, I think you said something like that. Yeah. So that's the book, Helen, for you. That's the one for you.
Yeah.
That's the version Jane Austen would have wanted.
So can you sign off, guys, by telling us where we can find you? And we didn't talk about Cinema Stories, so do you want to give us a quick pitch about your podcast?
Well, we've done one series.
What was your favourite episode, James?
I think it was any of the ones without you.
The one with Stephen Merchant.
Rhianna does appear in one of the episodes. So it's people talking about their 3 favourite cinemas, why they love them. It could be, one from the past. I think definitely with you, it was sort of a childhood one, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, like the Odeon.
Yeah, and then a lot of people have chosen ones that they only went to once, perhaps, on holiday or traveling or something, and then the one you go to every week in your adult life. There's lots of different stories. I think that's why we wanted the stories words in the titles, because it's not just it's the Odeon in wherever. You have
it's the closest one.
Anecdotes associated with those cinemas. You have links to them.
It's a really lovely podcast,
Yeah.
actually. I
Oh,
just
thank
like
you.
to chip in and say, yeah.
You know, and so that's that. We did one series that's still available. We're going to do another series, and it's, if you like movies and going to the cinema, it's celebrating that whole thing.
Fantastic. Right. Thank you very much, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty tunes, and Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Ben, and that's Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.